Hello, I'm Antonio Campo Guzman. I'm the chair of the Department of Theater at Northeastern University, and welcome to this conversation with my friend and colleague, Dr. Dani Snyder Young, about her new book, Privileged Spectatorship. Who best to run this conversation with Dani than our students? So we've invited three of our fabulous undergraduate students, Anna Bernholz, who's doing a combined major in cultural anthropology and theater, Hannah Levinson, who's just about to finish a combined major in English and theater, and Marion Flessen, who is a theater major as well. And they will be talking to Dani about this book that has just been published by Northwestern University Press. So without further ado, I'll leave you in the company of these amazing women.
So to start, a huge congratulations. I got the pleasure of working with Dr. Snyder Young over the summer, and it was a wonderful experience. So our first question for you is, throughout this project, was there a moment or experience that made you realize this was going to be a book?
So this project evolved in stages. So there is no easy answer to that question. This started from 2013 to 2015. I was a critic for HowlRound. At the time, HowlRound had stringers in 12 cities, watching performances and writing regular reviews, not consumer reviews to say like, yes, go see it, no, don't, but the kind of cultural commentary reviews, contextualizing why this play is significant here and now. So I was in Chicago and I was seeing a lot of plays about contemporary social issues, and I was watching audiences watch these plays intently because I was contextualizing what I was seeing on stage with how audiences were receiving them for the work I was doing for HowlRound. So that put me in a position that I was seeing a lot of different plays, all on contemporary social issues at different theaters all around the city for different audiences. And I saw a pattern that initially really baffled me, that at mainstream theaters, I was watching audience members in post-performance productions say, oh my God, I loved this play, and then tell a personal story that negated the central message or central premise of the play. And that baffled me. And the first time it happened, I tried to climb under my chair, and I didn't understand what I was seeing, that these people didn't understand the play. And as I watched the pattern persist, I realized that something was going on, that this was a spectatorship thing that I had just never noticed because I hadn't done this kind of systematic scan of the field in that sort of way before. And so I started asking questions like, why is this happening? So it's a pattern. So it's not one production that isn't doing it right. It's something that's happening more broadly. Now, at that time, I wasn't thinking about how mainstream theaters are predominantly white institutions and mainstream audiences are filled predominantly with upper middle class white people. I was just saying, oh, they're plays, it's theater. And so it took me a while to get under the skin of that problem and understand, to make the familiar strange in a way to understand that what I was watching was plays centering the experiences of BIPOC people performed in white institutions for white audiences. Now that's a non-neutral context, but it took me a while to get there. So first I started focusing on spectatorship and trying to just understand how spectatorship works at a theoretical level. And I'd started to unpack that a little bit in my first book, Theater of Good Intentions. And so I was still kind of on that train. And about a year and a half after Good Intentions came out, people read it and they started wanting to have conversations about it, wanting me to give talks, wanting me to write follow-up pieces or write pieces sort of in relationship to those ideas. And so I started writing some smaller pieces, thinking through some of the ways in which things that I saw in those theatrical events that I had been reviewing resonated with some of what I was reading in the spectatorship literature. Now, along with that, sort of during the there were 7 years that I was in Illinois, that I was in a writing group with sociologist Megan Burke, who is a critical whiteness theorist. And so there was this set of ideas around whiteness and critical ethnic studies that was circulating in my intellectual life, not in a I know I'm studying it, but in a saturating sort of the background. And so I spun some of those ideas into this spectatorship for a conference paper in 2015, 2016. And that sort of proved to be the charting the direction of the book. But it took me a while to figure out that I was looking at a pattern, and that in order to really illustrate a pattern in scholarship, it takes multiple in-depth case studies. And that's a project of the scope of a book. Now, in there, watching direct audience responses, there were also a couple of scandals around critical response. So in 2015, there was a scandal in Chicago, which is where I was living at the time, around the critical reception of This Is Modern Art at Steppenwolf Theater. And there was this big social media hullabaloo that there was this Theater for Young Audiences piece performed predominantly for audiences of young people in school matinees, centering the experiences of young people of color, focused on a crew of graffiti artists, really centering graffiti as art. And the two highest profile critics in the city, both white people of an older generation, like really responded to this play about graffiti as being about vandalism. And like, many of the patterns of white spectatorship that I was watching, or that I had been seeing the white audience members do, that I thought was like, oh, they just don't get it. Now the professional critics are also doing it. And I say now, but these are longstanding patterns. I was just beginning to notice them, not I discovered them. They were already there. And that made me realize that this was a larger conversation that included criticism, because critics, as critics, we are spectators too. We're professional spectators. And how does the landscape of spectatorship and the ways that white fragility and white privilege intersect with some of the features of active spectatorship make critical reception happen in some ways that, make critical reception happen in some ways that can sometimes be challenged.
So you already talked about it a little bit, but I was wondering if you could go into a little bit more depth about what surprised you over the course of writing this book.
So much surprised me. I feel like this project was peeling back the layers of an onion of my own white privilege and my own understandings about how the world worked. So as I said earlier, I started by not understanding the people around me, in some ways thinking I was better than the people around me because I understood the play and they didn't. Who were these people who didn't get it? In reality, it was me who didn't get it. I didn't know what I was looking at. And that through repeated viewings of some of these really important and rich productions, I learned. And by engaging repeatedly and in deep ways with The Bitter Game, with Trapped in a Traveling Minstrel Show, with The White Card, 3 case studies that I studied in a 6-month stretch in the fall of 2017 and the winter of 2018, that spending 6 months with Black Lives Matter plays, really like attending to what those plays are saying, helped me understand my own complicity in white supremacy and who I am in the world and what my body means and the ways that my gaze betrays my value system. And that's, with every learning, realizing just how much I had not known and had not understood.
So you kind of touched on your own experience with this, but for your readers, what do you want people to walk away with after reading this book?
So the big thing I learned reading this book is that predominantly white mainstream institutions are not neutral sites, and that watching theaters try to intervene in white supremacy by producing anti-racist plays, the institutions that were best positioned to do that were the smaller, less hierarchically organized theaters, particularly the ones that were nimble and mobile and could produce in spaces that are not in historically white institutional spaces. And that runs counter to a lot of the ways that the theater industry is set up. And I write in the book, disruption disrupts, right? The way to disrupt white supremacy in the theater is actually to disrupt the regular order of operations, the way that we do business. Now, I had no idea that a pandemic was going to literally disrupt the entire industry. That was outside of what I was expecting. But that as we rebuild, to really think about which institutions are best positioned to be able to pierce the segregated bubbles that most upper middle class white people, because that's 75% of theater audiences, right? So the organizations that are best positioned to pierce those bubbles of segregation are the ones that are able to create spaces that are legitimately diverse, that center the voices and the experiences of BIPOC people in spaces that are not dominated by whiteness and are not haunted by legacies of whiteness. And so those institutions, they exist and they matter. And as we are coming back from the pandemic, thinking about the ways in which we can resource those institutions So I say we, that's like we, us, university theaters. So that the way in which we co-produced a Company One show, that they're one of those theaters that is really positioned to be able to intervene, to be able to configure robust anti-racist performance events, and to be able to help resource them in this time of crisis is something that I give Antonio all of the credit for, and really like love that that act reflects my values and what I would hope people would walk away from the book wanting to do. And that's then a call that is possible, and that we, theater and higher education, have resources and are able to intervene in these ways to help support those nimble small institutions that are in danger of dying, that are the ones who are best positioned to be able to intervene in white supremacy. The other piece that I would want white people as individual spectators to walk away with is to think about how we engage, how our gaze works, how our white gaze is complicit in white supremacy. That thinking about making the familiar contours of white supremacy, the familiar comforts, strange. Checking, right, interrogating and staying curious about the impulse to distance ourselves from racism, to push it away and to make it somewhere else. And that there are moves that we can make as individuals that are self-reflective that can help. Now it's a drip and a drop, but as individual work that we can do, we can think about how we see the world, literally see, and start to recode and decolonize our own gazes.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for talking to us about that. That is all the questions that we have for you, but just want to give a hearty congratulations on your book. It's so exciting.
Thank you. We cannot hear you.
Well, I hope they can edit this out of the video. I just want to add our congratulations on behalf of the staff and the faculty of the department for your amazing accomplishment and how timely it is as we are reframing our department and centering the work that we need to do better. So your contribution is so welcome and so important. So thank you. And thank you, students, for joining us for this. And hope you read the book, get the book, and change the world. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.